Hello, a very good afternoon, and welcome to Pat Kumafani Conversations. It is that time of the Saturday afternoon, and Pastor Mapumulo calls it the holy hour. Okay, the holy hour of the holy day when we get together on Faith Heroes. Okay, Faith Heroes, the program that you don't want to miss on a Saturday afternoon, just for 1 hour. Okay, just for 1 hour between 2 and 3, where we take one Bible character, we dissect it, we discuss it, and we sort of bring an inspired and anointed interpretation of the circumstances around that particular character. And also, we bring about the applications and how relevant it is to you wherever you are. My name is Patko Mafani. Beautiful Saturday afternoon, beautiful Sabbath afternoon, right in the heart of winter. Let me bring on the panel today, Pastor Jabu Mapumulo, the producer. Okay, I want to bring him on, and we introduce the rest of the panel. Okay, Gwenya, hi, good afternoon, and welcome to you. Happy Sabbath.
Yes, good afternoon, Gwenya. Greetings to our viewers. It's always good to be here in this holy hour of the Sabbath day.
Lovely holy hour. That is the 2 to 3, the time for, of course, the time for Faith Heroes. Let me also invite our panelists, Pastor Stu Blose. Okay, it's good to have you, Madiba. You're not a stranger altogether. Madiba, welcome. Happy Sabbath to you.
Happy Sabbath, Charlie, and greetings to the viewers and the listeners. It's nice to be back here again with you guys.
Lovely, lovely, awesome, man. Okay, I'm going to bring in somebody. Okay, I'm going to bring in somebody who is also delighted to be with us today. So we've got this great panel because he also is here, an inspired panel. Okay, this is Pastor Lizo Mende Ujola. He is with us today. Jola, good afternoon and welcome to Faith Heroes as well.
Good afternoon, Buchao, and good afternoon to the pastors, Pastor Mapumulo and Pastor Blose, and also good afternoon to the viewers, and happy and blessed Sabbath to you all.
Wonderful, great stuff. It's amazing. Well, I'd love to ask Pastor Mapumulo to come in here, Gwenya. I know that this has been a great week in terms of your preparations as a producer, and I want you to be the one that breaks the ice on the Bible character that we are handling today. Well, many people saw the poster. I saw the poster already. Okay, what is it about the man by the pool at Bethesda? We're not even told his name, you know. Why is he there in the story and the life and the journey of Jesus's ministry? What's important about us meeting this man today? How does Jesus meet him? When you just take us through, and then we'll bring the panelists in as we move on.
Yes, thank you very much, Gwenya. Look, what the number of things that make this character important. Firstly, is that he has no name. You would know that in this show, we cover quite a number of characters, some of which don't have names. However, their contribution to society is very vital in our own journey of faith. So what makes this man who has no name important also in this show today is his contribution to our journey of faith. You know, in this show, we do this to extract life principles. We are not here for entertainment or any other thing, but to give people principles that they can use in life. So this man, well, John chapter 5, this is the man by the pool of Bethesda. And also what makes him important, interesting to discuss, is the fact that when Jesus comes to the pool, the Bible says there are a multitude of impotent folks. In other words, people who are disabled, who are troubled. The question is, why did Jesus pick up on this man when there were so many of them that were there? So we will look at that, and also why the Bible even mentions the length of time or period where this man has been sick. But also in the story there are important questions here that are worth our focus, our discussion. Now, Jesus asked, "Will thou be made whole?" I mean, what kind of a question is that? When you know that all of these people here are here just for that. Of course, that's what we think. Why would Jesus ask that type of a question? But at the same time, when the man responds to Jesus, he is not answering the question that he asked. How in the world, when someone comes to bring a solution and you come up with an answer that has nothing to do with the question? And so they are really, this is a very intriguing story that is worth us looking at and discussing and see what is it that God has for each one. So as you listen today, that's the question you must ask at the back of your mind. What is it at the end of the show that I need to walk away and apply in my life today? Thank you, Ngwenya.
Well, lovely, Ngwenya. And we are delighted then, brothers and sisters, that we can together, get these questions answered. I see a lot of people have joined us, okay? And Unsiki has joined us from Northern Ireland this afternoon, and Nomakaya City, good afternoon, Bazalwane. And Tony Siaka says, powerful introduction. Bongi is from the Middle East and has joined us as well. It's great to have friends joining us for this particular hour. And Pastor Mente, I'd love to bring you in here. Maybe you can also pave the way, because I think, Pastor Mapumulo, you've asked very pertinent questions. Why do we have things that don't connect? Why do we have a question that almost does not make sense? Do you want to get well? I mean, the man is not well. He wants to get well. Why does Jesus ask him, do you want to get well? And when he answers, he doesn't answer the question directly. He says, andinamndu, ukuthi xa amanzi egxobhagxobhiwe andincede andithathe. So there's a lot of scattered, broken pieces here that should make something concrete. And hopefully by the time we come to the end of the show, we would have had a solid explanation of why these pieces, scattered pieces in the story. Jola, please come in here. Mashimane wivulile indlela wayibeka induku ebandla. Ukhona uJola, ukhona uMadiba, and let us talk about it.
Thank you very much, Butiza. I think first and foremost, for us to have an understanding of this particular passage, we need to locate this story within the broader context of the whole book of John. I think Pastor Blose will help me here. Let me just propose this approach. I will pick his brain as I speak. I will let him interject and also let Pastor Mapumulo come in. But I think let's begin here. When we look at the entire book of John, John gives us in chapter 20, gives us the basis why the book was written. John says in chapter 20, somewhere in chapter 20 says, there are many miracles that Jesus performed, which are not recorded in this book.
Yeah.
But in fact, he does not call them miracles. He calls them signs. There are many signs that he performed that are not recorded in this book. But those that are recorded in this book, they are recorded so that you may believe that he's the Son of God. So that is the purpose statement of the book. So every sign, that is why he does not call them miracles. He calls them signs, because they are a sign pointing towards the fact that Jesus is the Son of God. So he performs these signs to impress in the minds of the people that he is the Son of God. So that we need to locate then this story within that greater context. How does this story fit within that greater context? So when you come to chapter 5 verse 1 says, there was a feast of the Jews in Israel. This creates an impression. This creates an impression, Pastor Blose. When it says there was a feast of the Jews, it creates an impression that all Jews were welcome. All Jews could access this feast. But we know, according to the Mishnah, that is the Jewish commentary on the laws, the rabbis list people who were not welcomed in the feast. And among those were the blind, the lame, and everyone who had whose body was otherwise abled. So this story, even though it says it was a feast of the Jews, but other Jews were excluded. Hence, you find the Jews were excluded from the feast. They were located somewhere in the porches. I want you to come in, Blose, and perhaps give us a point or two, Uti. Why were these Jews located there? And what was Jesus' relations with the Jews and the feast in this particular instance?
Right. Chawe.
Take it away.
No, Mente is just the introduction itself. I don't want to fall into a trap of getting excited by the introduction that I end up losing the ability to make sense to the saints, because I think it's very important and it's critical, right? Ubana, as Mfundisi Mente has said, right? One is that what John is seeking to do with this story, and this is something that you will pick up, and I'm pivoting this on what Mente has said, is that in the story, John is seeking to establish Jesus as a God who does not respond to people's faith, but who does something for people in order for them to have faith. So in this story, faith doesn't deliver healing, but healing is meant to strengthen and to institute and to capacitate those who are without faith in order for them to believe. So the healing of this man wasn't a result of God responding to his faith. He has no faith. In fact, the way that this man is so faithless, he doesn't even have the ability to identify the presence of the one who's there to heal him, let alone have the ability to ask and request for healing. So this man, right, is not healed because he has faith. He is healed precisely because he lacks faith, so that in his healing, he may have something to believe in. So the sickness, right, this infirmity, and if you follow it closely and we were to do a word study, the Bible says he had an infirmity. In other words, he had a condition that was eating him. His condition wasn't just incapacitating him from being able to walk, but it was also destroying him. So the longer he suffered, the more it ate away and destroyed him. Now let me move this to the spiritual realm and say that this man's healing, and indeed all our suffering, all our ailments, all our persecution and executions, what they do is that they not only cause us to suffer, but they have a debilitating effect. They have an impact. They impact us at such a point that they not only destroy us, but they also destroy our ability to believe. That the longer they last, the least and the less we believe in our ability to be healed. We actually end up believing that the condition we are suffering from was meant to be. We legitimize it, we accept it as a part of our lives, to the point where we no longer even request God to even help us, to even deliver us from this condition. And so what God does is that when he heals us, it is not in response to our ability to believe, but it is in response to our lack of belief. It is when he interjects and when he inserts himself into our situation that we then not only are healed physically, but we are also healed from the debilitation, from the spiritual debilitation, the inability to exercise faith, the inability to have faith, the inability to even know who is there to heal us. That is the first one that I wanted to touch on in as far as this idea of faith is concerned. That Jesus here is not a miracle performer as a result of people's ability to believe in his ability to deliver miracles. But at times, God delivers us precisely because we lack the faith, we lack the belief. The reason why I say this is so that you do not think that God's ability to deliver you is dependent on your ability to believe in him. It is not dependent on your faith. That is why I have a problem when people say more prayer, more power, more faith, more deliverance. Deliverance is not a response, and it is not directly proportional to your faith. Deliverance is precisely at times a result of you not having any faith, so that you can have faith. Now, that is why then, we must challenge this notion of miracles and consumerism that is going on in a lot of our churches, where men of God, or where wolves dressed as men of God, sell miracles, and they sell the idea of faith. Tell people to buy faith, to buy miracles in order for them to be delivered, in order for them to be healed. They sell, there's this transactional relationship that people have with this idea of faith. So the more we pay to God, the more we humiliate ourselves. We eat grass, we kiss frogs, we drink petrol. The more we believe that God will heal us and will intervene with urgency. And allow me to say this to you, that God is not dependent on your ability to believe in him in order to deliver you, but he delivers you precisely so that you can be enabled to believe in him. We are not incapacitated by what we are suffering from physically, but it is in what it does to us spiritually that incapacitates us. So that's the one that I want to share. And man, let me say this. There's this classism that occurs, that happens even within this parable. There's this classism that we must talk about even within the church, right? That while we gather at church for our weekly spiritual fix, oh yes, you heard me, we are not gathering to worship. We are gathering as drug addicts. So our desire and yearning for worship is not because we want to be made better people. It is so that we can get our weekly spiritual fix. We can get that drug of worship, that drug of affirmation and of having pleased God, so that we can feel like we have done something for God. But in that aspiration, there's this exclusivist mentality where our centers and our places of worship are inaccessible. Yes, women are allowed into the worship space, but they can only operate up until to a certain extent. Yes, we have no problem with people who are infirmed, but our churches are not designed to be accessed by wheelchairs and by the blind. Yes, we can sing together, we can worship together, but we've got no hymns that are made or that are written in Braille. We've got no Bibles that are written in Braille that not only are brought to the church by church members, but are supplied by the church to other church members who are infirmed, who are physically disabled. Our church is classist, our church is ableist, our church is sexist. And I'm not just talking about a particular denomination, I'm talking about the whole of Christianity, where we do not allow people access to the presence of God. And let me share this with you. Let me tell you this now. You may think, we get to a point where we think that the location is what carries holiness. We think that the location is what carries deliverance. We begin to protect spaces. We protect centers and areas in the church, not realizing that the space, the center, is just an emblem of a symbol. It is representing something greater than us. And so when the space fails to represent the one it is meant to communicate to other people, then God departs from the space. When the space no longer accepts, when the space becomes exclusivist, when the space becomes oppressive, when the space becomes sexist, when the space becomes ableist, then God moves from the space and it goes to where those who are excluded have been gathered and bundled up in. That is why Jesus, during a feast of the Jews, is not in the temple, because not all the Jews are in the temple. That's why during the feast of the Jews, Jesus is not in the temple, because he's not an ableist God. He's not there to enable the classism. So he leaves the space, leaves them with their space, and creates the worship, and creates the holiness, and creates the sanctity amongst the people who are unable to get access into that space.
Hey, Blose. Hey, Blose. Look, I don't know, Fundus Mapumulo. It's really interesting, because I gather from what Pastor Blose is saying. I gather from what Pastor Blose, especially because this man did not ask, for healing. He did not ask to be healed. Therefore, he did not have faith in the healer. He did not even recognize the healer. Unlike, as Pastor Blose says, all those instances where Jesus says, your faith has made you whole, your faith has healed you. And this man was healed, without that faith. And just to emphasize on what Pastor Blose is saying, is that a miracle is not necessary where faith exists.
Yes, correct.
When you have faith, you have faith, you don't need a miracle, because a miracle is meant for those who do not have faith. Because the purpose of the miracle, it is to capacitate you to have faith. It is to build faith in you, so that when faith is built, faith can sustain you without needing the miracle. So it is a misnomer for you to say, I have faith, God will honor my faith and do this.
Yes.
He may not do it because you don't need the miracle. The faith will sustain it. Miracles are for weak people, man. Don't boast about miracles. You are boasting about weakness. Strong people don't need miracles so that they can be sure and guaranteed that God is with them. Their faith alone is enough. So stop boasting about a weakness. Demanding and asking for miracles is a weakness. And God is an arbitrary God. He does things as he sees fit. So this man did not ask for the miracle. And it's interesting. I don't know whether it only happens to me. You know, when you, as Mfundisi Mapumulo said earlier, indicated, he finds this man, Jesus that is, and then he asks him, do you want to be whole? Do you want to be healed? You know, when you bring a child a stock sweet, you know, 99.9 chances are that abantwana bazithanda ilegesi, and a child will not say no to a sweet. But as a parent, you'll always ask, uyayifuna sweet? You don't ask because you think this child akayifuni sweet, when you are excited that you are going to give, you know, the child a sweet. As a human being, it's always exciting as a parent to see a child happy because you brought them something. Uyayifuna sweet, and the child, you want to invoke excitement in this child because you are already excited by the fact that the child is going to be excited, or by the fact that you are excited that you are bringing uyayifuna sweet, trying to invoke excitement. And then the child will answer in the affirmative, already smiling, saying, yes, uyayifuna sweet, because the child understands and knows that you have the capacity to bring sweets, or you have brought them sweets before. The child recognizes the person who is asking this question. Now, this man lacks that understanding. He does not even recognize this person. Therefore, no excitement is aroused in him. He simply responds, I have no man. Let's I don't know, Mapumulo, if you want to come in there before we move to another point.
Good. Look, Jola, you see this man, it is true, there was just no faith in him. In fact, we can just say he was both hopeless and helpless. And you know, but I love what Ellen White says of this man, when she says, when Jesus said, will thou be made whole, he says, the words attracted or got his attention, and immediately hope sprang up from within him. But then, so which means, therefore, is confirming the man had lost hope, and he needed something outside of himself really to turn him around and to begin to believe that, look, even though we are hopeless and helpless for a long time, you can still begin anew now. But then listen to this. So the hope springs up, but then he immediately also remembers that, hey man, but I tried many a times in this pool, and I failed. You see, there's a problem here now immediately. So in other words, even though Jesus was offering, the man started, he was about to start, but when he just started, He looked back on where he had failed many a times, and then he lost hope again. And these are the challenges that we face in life, because today you are on a high, you are baptized today, and God has done this for you, and all of a sudden you look back firstly at yourself, you look back at your failures, and failures will never be your source of hope. But then fortunately, because we have a God who sees what we can become, because this was the issue here with God, because God could see where the man was, but he treated him because he could see what he could become. But then when he says, look, hey, rise up, because when Jesus then says rise up, in other words, he had read then that this man was going to fall back into hopelessness. In other words, this was just a command. So faith really is. I want to go back to your point that you made earlier on, John. Okay. We boast about the faith that we have. There is nothing dangerous in the journey of life like our own faith. That thing is very dangerous, because that thing goes with emotion. When you are down, that thing disappear. The only thing that we need is the faith of Jesus. And that is my story.
Yes.
The faith of Jesus.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Yes.
It can't be your faith. And I think this is where Satan keeps us spirited but not spiritual, because we are excited about this faith that we think we have. And you ask, you know, Jola, you ask this without judging anybody, and say, if we have this faith as church people, why are we not advanced in our lifestyle more than those that do not know God? If that is true, why are we not making good, consistent decisions for the Lord if we have faith? And so, and my submission, therefore, is that we needed to come out of this false sense of security of us having faith. We need the faith of Jesus, and we can talk later about what this faith of Jesus is. Thank you, John.
Chawe.
Yeah.
Allow me, Chawe. Allow me, Pastor Blose, to problematize, Jesus. As a theologian, I have that responsibility of challenging even Jesus.
You want us to allow you to do what?
To challenge and problematize him.
I'm listening, Joel. I'm listening.
Blose, are you there? Are you there, Blose?
Yeah, he just got off. He's gonna come back. Okay. Continue.
You see what happens here in this particular story. He in my view, allow me to play devil's advocate. He succeeds in one thing, and by so succeeding, he fails in another. This is what I mean by that. You see, at that time, the temple was the center of begging, beggars, and crippled men, those who were blind, those who were mute and deaf, those who had physical, impediments, were not allowed access to the temple. They're not allowed to go into the temple because their bodies were sick. And then, hence, every time he healed someone, Jesus would say, "Go show yourself to the priest in the temple."
Okay.
And in this particular instance, I think Blose touched on this. In this particular instance, he finds this group of people who were not given access to the feast of the Jews, and they were located somewhere in the porches, by the pool of Bethesda. And he heals this man. Later on in the chapter, this man goes into the temple. He's only allowed to access, the temple when he is healed, but not before that. Now, here is the problem. This barrier, he appears as if Jesus Christ is maintaining the status quo. He does not challenge the status quo where church, the temple, and religion and spirituality is not accessed by everyone. But he heals this person before this person can present himself in the temple. But I like how That is the problem, or that is the apparent failure of Jesus, where he maintains the status quo that the temple can only be accessed when you are whole. So the sick, the lame, and the wild, they are closed outside. But I like how Pastor Blose, deals with this. When Jesus sees that the sick, the lame, the paralyzed are not allowed access to the temple, he does not change the laws of the Jews, but he brings the temple to the people.
Aye, man.
Because the lame, the paralyzed are not allowed in the temple, in the Jewish synagogue. And by the way, Jesus Christ is the center, is the object of what is happening in the temple. And he removes himself from the temple, and then he goes to this society that has been excluded, to this society that has been ostracized. And then they become the center of the activities of God. And I think this should be the approach. And I have observed, how the church has become an exclusive space, how the church has become so comfortable for those who fit in a particular class in society, those who are within a certain, economic bracket. But what Jesus does, he moves away from the exclusive class and he goes into the margins, those people who are deemed unworthy to be in the presence of the temple. And I like what Pastor Blosser said earlier. Let me emphasize it. We as the children of God have a responsibility of bringing God to the people. If by our setup in our churches, if by our structures, if by our programs, if by our diet, if by our dress code, if by all these sorts of things that are a prerequisite. I mean, I've heard many times before in the church, they say, oh, you can't come here if you're wearing pants. You can't come here if you're wearing earrings. You can't come. All these things that are blocking people, this exclusivity, this exclusiveness, we have a responsibility of bringing Jesus to the people when the rules of the temple are preventing them access.
Okay. Okay, John.
Yo. Ciao.
Willem. Kangena madiba.
Yo, lentwana kayamente man. Ciao, there's something beautiful about what Blose Mente is saying, and I just want to backtrack 2 steps here on the intention and the purpose of the Gospel of John's Gospel. I don't know if you look at the Gospel of John, when he writes his Gospel, right, it is different to all other Gospels. Whereas all other Gospels contain miracles where Jesus is touching people, where Jesus has physical proximity to people. He touches them, he lays his hands on them, and I mean it's a very beautiful thing that you see in other Gospels, but it is missing in the Gospel of John. In the miracles within the Gospel of John, Jesus doesn't come into contact with anyone. He doesn't touch anyone, right? All miracles, all events, all instances within the Gospel of John, when there's communion, when there's contact, when there is a coming together of Jesus and men, there is no physical touching. It is only the word. In chapter 1, when John sets him up and introduces him, he introduces him as the word of God, which was and is, right, and has come to dwell amongst men. In chapter 2, he is the word that prays over water and turns it into wine. In chapter 3, he is the word that delivers Nicodemus from the structural religion, exclusivism of his religion, and introduces him to this Jesus who is the Son of God. Through only him, salvation is possible. In chapter 4, he meets the woman at the pool, at the well, and he communes with her, delivers her, from this notion and this idea that Jesus or God can only be worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. And Jesus says to her in chapter 4 of John, he says, there's coming a time when God will be worshipped neither on this hill nor in that mountain, for God is spirit. Right? So this is the word of God that has come to deliver this woman from this understanding and this perception of God who is limited by location, who is limited by structures, right? He is a word that wanders freely. He is a word that cannot be contained. He is a word that cannot be owned. He cannot be owned. Nobody can say, I own the truth. I own God. He belongs to us. He is our truth. The moment you are able to brand the truth after your own likeness, you are no longer worshiping God, but you are now worshiping yourself in the image. You're worshiping a God who is in your image, right? So this word cannot be contained. This word cannot be owned, right? In chapter 6, I'm not done. He prays over a boy's lunch and multiplies it so that it feeds 1,000 people. In chapter 6, rather, he delivers a woman who was caught in adultery. That is in chapter 8. The lunch is in chapter 9. He delivers a woman who was caught in adultery, and he says, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." This exchange or this existence of miracles throughout the book of John that lack physical touch but are only effected and are only made possible by the word. Of course, we get to chapter 11, right, which is the last miracle in the book of John that is recorded, right? This is the last miracle in the book of John. Jesus resurrects Lazarus without touching him, without touching anything around the tomb, and he calls Lazarus, "Come forth." And the word springs forth from the mouth of God into the tomb and resurrects Lazarus. So the word, right, the word itself is powerful enough, right? You don't need his touch. You don't need his presence. His word is powerful, is as powerful as his touch. His word is as efficacious as his presence. His word is, so that's why it can't be contained. That's why it cannot be owned, because it needs to be, you can't contain it. It needs to be let loose so that it can effect change wherever it goes. That is why, therefore, in chapter 5, when the temple tries to limit God, when the temple religion tries to contain God, God breaks free in the person of Jesus Christ. He refuses to become part of the festivities when there are others who are suffering so close to where the festivities are taking place. Let me say that again. You see, the pool of Bethesda was right outside the temple by the sheep gate. That is where everyone who had an offering to sacrifice in the temple, that's the gate that they used to get into the temple. Jesus refused to accept offerings in his name that past a people who are suffering without sparing a second thought for them. You may be worshiping God, but you may be worshiping in the house of God. You may be worshiping in a church that you believe belongs to God, but it's also quite possible that God has long left the sanctuary. He has long left the temple, and you missed him on your way to his church. You missed him on your way to him. Why? Because you tried to own the word, and the word cannot be owned. The word exists where there's suffering. The word exists where there's darkness. That is why it comes where there's formlessness, and it creates shapes and form. That is why it comes where there's chaos, and it creates order. It comes where there are storms that are threatening and covering the whole earth, and it causes the waters to recede. That is why the word is able to enter your life even today, as formless, as chaotic, as painful as it might be, and it is able to deliver healing. It is able to deliver providence. It is able to deliver life wherever you are, because this word is not a word you go to find. It is a word that finds you. It hunts after you. It smells the air. It tracks your steps. It looks for you. That is why the psalmist says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall hunt after me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Why? I don't dwell because I found my way to the house of the Lord. I dwell in the house of the Lord because the word found me. It refused to be contained. It refused to be limited, and it looked for me. It hunted for me. It's wild, this word of God. It's uncontainable, this word of God. But let me say this. The word of God, this is how it works. Now, these are the mechanics. Let me give you theological physics. Or theological science, theological biology, right? Let me give you some physics. This is how the word works, right? That when it lands and makes contact, right, with whatever it is speaking to, right?
Yes, sir.
It instructs, but contained in the instruction is also the
power.
capacity to obey the instruction. Am I talking to someone out there? So,
Yes, sir.
the word, right? When it is sent out, it is sent and it comes in the form of an instruction. But within the instruction is also the capacity to obey and listen and follow the instruction. So when the word comes, right, it says to darkness, let there be light. But darkness has no ability to produce light. So when the word lands, darkness learns how to produce light. It lands on water, right? A water that has never known what it means to recede, right? And when the word lands and makes an impact and makes contact with the water obeys. So the word also comes with an ability to do what the word commands. So when Jesus says to this man who hasn't walked for 38 years, who's forgotten how to walk for 38 years, whose muscles had wasted and waned away, the word arrives. When it lands in his ears, right, it doesn't stop there, but it infiltrates, it accesses his whole body, right down to the finest, the minutest, and the smallest of his sinews and muscles, and it capacitates them to do what the instruction that he has heard is directing him to do. So when Jesus says to him, get up and walk, him getting up, right, is as far as his participation takes place. But the ability to get up has arrived with the word. This is a creating word. It's an empowering word. It's not just a creating word. It's a capacitating word. It is a word that when you hear, it also enables you to do what it asks you to do. And so in this text or in this story, what John is trying to teach us here is that you may not have Jesus walking down the streets of Makassar. You may not have him walking down the streets of Langa Township. You may not have access to the hem of his garment in the streets of Soweto. You may not have him sending you to any pools and spitting in the mud in order to heal you of your blindness in the hills of Kwamashu. You may not have him in the suburbs of Umhlanga when your marriage is falling apart. You may not have access to this Jesus. He may not be coming around. There might be no clothes to hang on to. There might be no touch from him. But today, John wants you to know that his word is as powerful as his touch, if not more powerful.
In fact, Blose, in fact, his word did not only capacitate his body, his physical body.
Yes.
Imagine this man who's never walked before. Yeah. There comes a stranger and says to him, pick your bed, get up and walk.
Yeah.
He's never walked for 38 years. Yeah. As you have indicated, his muscles had died and withered. So this word did not only effect change in his physique, but also in his faith and mentality. It created something.
Yeah.
His word created faith in him. Not only the capacity to walk, but faith for him to even decide. I mean, if it was me, I've been sitting here for 38 years. Someone I don't know, says, pick up your bed and walk. I would have asked him, are you mad? If it was as simple as that, I would have done it, years ago. I mean, if walking is just getting up, taking my bed and walk, I would have done it ages ago. But his word did not only effect change in his physique, but it first, before it got to his physique, it first got to his psyche. He believed that he can walk. And what the mind believed, the body followed. Yeah. You see, this is how faith works. This is how faith works. Faith works the same way as fear, because fear creates the very object of our fear.
Yeah.
Yes.
You may say something, you may see an object and think, hey man, that is a tree that I'm seeing. And if you believe it's a tree, that tree will start moving. And that tree will start running towards you because you first believed it in your mind. If this man did not believe in his mind that he can walk, I can tell you right now, he would not have been able to stand up and walk. So his word created something in his mind. And then he acted upon what has been impressed by the word of God. But what I want you to touch on, Mapumulo, we don't know the man's age. We don't know his age. We only know he's been sick for 38 years, Blose. And from our calculations, we are sure that when Jesus was born in a manger in Bethlehem, this man was sick. This man was paralyzed.
Yes, sir.
When Jesus was 12 years in the temple, this man was paralyzed. When Jesus Christ was walking streets, this man was paralyzed. For 38 years, this man had been paralyzed. And now Jesus comes and he effects healing. What took 38 years of his life was healed within a split of a second. It did not take God the exact amount of time it took for the illness to be upon the body of this man for him to effect change. I don't know, Blose. One thing I like about this story, Mafani, let me confess this. I know this is Pastor Blose's story. He loves it so much. When you said you are doing this story hour, I said to him, Chief, I will rely on you. I will hang on you. This is your story. Can you please chow this point, man?
Chow it. Can this word that is so powerful, can this word reawaken faith that is dying somewhere? Can this word resurrect something that is busy decaying somewhere? Just the word. Can it do that to me? That word, people who have been following Jesus, but all of a sudden their faith has gone weak. People who have been worshiping him, but all of a sudden, because of whatever, because of COVID-19 that has cleaned the family, because of whatever, can this word reawaken faith?
Yes, Wanya. I want us to back up a bit here, because Umente said earlier on he's problematizing Jesus.
Yeah, good.
And there was a part where we're talking about Jesus endorsing the status quo. Let me tell you why Jesus, one of the reasons why Jesus had to heal the man by the pool of Bethesda. Stay with me on this one.
Yeah.
That the healing of the man in the pool of Bethesda was a vehicle to heal the Jewish nation. Stay with me.
Okay.
When Jesus was healing the man in the pool of Bethesda, it was a plan for him to heal spiritually the nation of the Jews. Let me tell you why. Because when Jesus heals the man, now the question is, why didn't Jesus come on Friday? Why did he come on Wednesday? Why did he come on Sabbath? You see, because Jesus had to use the man on Sabbath, because from there he had to go to church, to the synagogue. Because when he arrived there, that was the end of the church, because there was disruption there. There was disruption there. So people now have to be confronted with the fact of Christ. Because they must ask now, why are you carrying this thing? The man must be able to answer what happened. And Jesus does not reveal himself to the man when we think, humanly speaking, he should have. But the timing was not there yet, because he was waiting for him for the right time in the synagogue for them to ask. And Jesus then shows up, and the man does not know, but then Jesus shows up and he confirms this is the man, but then Jesus declares who he is. And that is when now the Jews had no option but to accept that Jesus is the one who healed the man. And so what am I saying here? Yeah. You see, we suffer sometimes from denominational pride.
Okay.
Sometimes we suffer from personal pride. And Jesus was dealing with about this very situation. And number three, Jesus was also dealing with this very important lesson for all of us, and that is never undermine anybody, because your salvation may as well come through that very person.
man.
The man in the pool has no access to the synagogue, but their salvation is dependent on the man in the pool, because it's when they talk to the man from the pool that truly the one that they are about in the synagogue is actually the one who was supposed to deal with. And so therefore, you may be in the church for so long, you may be educated, you may be having this, that, or the other, but you may be missing one piece, and that piece may be Jesus.
Yeah.
And that man in the pool may be the man that you are looking for, that you don't know. Remember, the Jews did not know that they needed Jesus. And the Jews thought that they did not need the man in the pool, and yet that was the vehicle God used to save them. And so therefore God is partly here dealing with pride. That be careful of what you are blessed with, lest it becomes a curse. And so therefore humility should characterize who, not only who we are, but whose we are. And this was for me was the thrust of the issue here of the men in the pool of Bethesda. So all this, so God uses a very minor, insignificant person, and he's dealing with the whole issue of the Jewish nation. So I'm saying, therefore, today you maybe say, I am this important member in this denomination, and I'm better here than somebody else in another denomination. And little you may be knowing that, by the way, this other denomination that we are better than is actually your man in the pool of Bethesda. Thank you. Thank you, Chawe.
Yeah. Chawe.
Yeah, Matiba.
Let me get in here. There's a worship service that's waiting for me here in Cape Town. So I want to just give you these 5 points. 5 points, but I would not take as long as they are, right? To give you these 5 points. One, but I love this story because it has so many powerful and profound spiritual lessons which are very needed, especially in this time of great suffering and troubling.
So panic about the service you are supposed to do this afternoon. That service you're going to do, it's fine. But part 2 now, yes.
Ulonde ngamfuni yo part 2. Ulonde ngamfuni yo part 2. Let's finish this thing now today. Let's finish.
Thank you, Jola.
So I want to say this quickly though, Chawe. Let me say this quickly.
Yes.
Right. Number one, the Bible says, right, and this is by way of answering a problem that Blose and Mente has raised. Why did it take Jesus so long, right, to heal this man? Jesus was here for 33 years before he got into the pool of Bethesda to heal this man. Why go to the wedding of Cana before you heal this man? Why go to the temple as a 12-year-old and argue with Pharisees before you heal this man? Why must you do all these other things that are seemingly insignificant when you knew about this man's suffering even while you are still in heaven? Because there's a 5-year period between Jesus' time here on earth and this man falling sick. So there was a 5-year period when Jesus was in heaven and this man was at the pool. So Jesus knew about this man's suffering. But the delay in getting to this man is what worries me, right? And it is what I feel and believe worries many of us, right? And the answer lies in this man's response, right? When Jesus asked him, do you want to be made well? And the man says, sir, I have no one. I have no one. See, the problem here is that the 38 years of this man's suffering are indicative and are marked and marred by absence and silence, right? The 38 years of his suffering, right, is not just the duration of his suffering, but it is also the duration of God's absence, the absence of his fellow men, the absence of family. The 38 years are a duration of the length and the profound nature of his suffering. He suffered for 38 years and he had no one during that 38 years. But what shocks me, the first thing that shocks me and what surprises me is that even after 38 years of disappointment, even after 38 years of neglect and ostracizing, even after 38 years of neglect, even after 38 years of absence and silence, this man still believes that this year could be my year. He never gives up. He still believes that this year will be the year of my breakthrough. 38 years of disappointment, not months, not days, not weeks, years of disappointment. There is a lifetime. There are people who are listening and watching to this who are younger than the duration of this man's suffering. But never for a moment, never for one single year did he not believe that this year could be my year. I believe that what keeps him alive in that pool, what keeps him alive on that match, is the belief that tomorrow will be better than today. Sometimes we don't need magnificent and grand displays of power in order to be healed. Sometimes all we need is just a little belief that when the sun sets and the sun rises again tomorrow, what it hit today will be gone by tomorrow. Tomorrow will be much better, will be less painful than today. So that is the first thing that I want to say. Hold on, hang on. Tomorrow might be better than today. Yes, it may have been 38 years. Yes, it may have felt like a lifetime. But when Jesus arrives on the scene, remember, he doesn't need 38 years to deliver you. All he needs is a moment to say, get up and walk. And I bet you nobody counted how long it took me to say that. Get up and walk. It is not 38 years long. So the duration of healing is immediate. It is sudden. It is now. It does not take as long as it took him to suffer. So when Jesus says to him, get up and walk, he is healed. He will be required to heal you. Let me say that again. Do not mistake the duration of your suffering for the amount of effort that will be required to heal you. Okay? So the fact that you suffered for so long doesn't mean God needs as long to heal you. She bled for 12 years. All she needed to do was touch the hem of his garment and she was healed. They were pursued by Egyptian soldiers. There was an army behind them. There was a mountain in front of them. There was an ocean in front of them, rather. Mountains on the side and the wilderness on their left. And God, right, with all this multitude of problems to sort, and with all these difficulties that God needed to solve for them, he doesn't go striking soldiers down. He doesn't go flattening mountains. He doesn't go populating wildernesses. All he does is he commands Moses to lift his stick over the water, and the waters part, and they went through. The amount of things that you're facing are not indicative of how much effort God needs to put into saving you. Sometimes God has this divine arrogance where the size of your suffering, the size of your persecution is always responded to in the simplest and in the most insignificant of ways. Yes, the fire has been heated up 7 times hotter than normal. Yes, the strongest soldiers have been chosen to throw you in.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you have been tied with ropes. But when God responds to that, he doesn't bend the ropes. He doesn't deal with all the other problems. He simply shows up. Yes, your body has been lacerated. Yes, you've been arrested. Yes, chains on your hands and on your feet. Yes, you've been thrown into the last cell in the prison. Gates have been locked, like Paul and Silas. But when God shows up, he doesn't need to go through all these things. All he needs to do is tap his foot to the sound of your singing and your praying. And immediately the chains fall off and the gates are open. The more difficult the problem, the simpler the intervention. The more difficult the challenges, the less effort God seems to put into delivering you. So never ever fall into the trap of mistaking the duration of your suffering for the amount of effort that God will require in order to heal you. Here's why he takes 38 years. Here's why it takes long. I shared this yesterday with an audience, and I said, I've got a son, right? He usually screams when there are monkeys that jump into our window. Cries, ah! You know, there are monkeys that where we live, there are monkeys, and we're not allowed to hit them. So they jump in through the windows, right? They jump in through the windows, these monkeys, and my boy screams, ah! When he's in his room. And I get up and I rush and I run to go save him, because he's young, he's vulnerable, he's weak. He's weak and vulnerable to anything and to a lot of things around the house, right? So I rush to go and help him. I rush to go and save him because he's vulnerable. Sometimes the monkeys jump in through the window and they find his mother, right? They find his mother in the room, right? And she screams. I don't rush. I don't run there. I don't run to the room when she screams. It's not because I don't love her. I love them equally. But what informs my response, right, is not what's in my heart. What informs my response is who they are. He's a child. He's vulnerable. So I have to get to him quickly. She's a woman. She's an adult. I can afford to delay. You didn't hear me. Right. Right. He's a child. And so I have to get there immediately.
Yeah.
She's an adult. I can afford to delay.
Yeah.
Do not mistake the quickness of God's response for the size of your faith. Sometimes God hurries. Sometimes God hurries, not because you are strong in faith, but precisely you are weak, you are vulnerable, and He needs to get to you timelessly and on time. And sometimes God delays, and it takes 38 years because you are an adult. You can handle this. It will not kill you. It will not destroy you. And He'll get to you when He gets to you.
Bazalwan, the time is now 3 o'clock. Hey, andinamntu.
Hey, that's look Ngwenya. Andinamntu is our opening argument next week.
I need us to deal with that. I need us to deal with that. And
if that part, whether he's gonna come kicking and screaming, Uchola, uzawukhala kuloo ndawo. Uchola uzawukhala kuloo ndawo. Andinamntu next week.
Umadiba, we have to let him go. He did ask to be excused, but I think our audience, if there's a time when our audience will kill us if we don't come back, this is the time. Yeah. They are all saying, come back for part 2, please. All of them. They're saying, come back for part 2. Asingadilishani nale ndawo ethi.
Ithi ndawo.
Thank you so much, Mfundisi Bam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will call Umfundisi Blose as well and extend our profound gratitude nakuye for allowing God to use him. Ebesechilo Jola wasikhobisa inkluva ukuthi itekisi kaBlose le umvile nangoku elenda into kokuba une home ground advantage.
Yeah.
Ananobani ke nibone na iKaizer Chiefs xa idlala ine home ground advantage ibethe 4.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Sabbath.
Hi. Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Because last week we took it further.
No, let's not go there. Thank you so much, Mishiman, Ngwenya, my producer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for not sleeping these days. Uspreparela. Why outline our sneaker? Ge intro a brilliant kangaka. Emva koko awama ecingweni ubukele. You participated and argued a point. And uThixo unisebenzisile nonke befundisi bam. Mfundisi Mente, thank you so much, Jola. And Mfundisi Mente ke babukeli ebemane apha ecaleni emane ehlatywa ngenaliti ngumfundisi umdanyane uAce emane emhlaba ngenaliti apha ecaleni emane incwina. And so kumnandi kwaThixo, I must say, zimnandi izinto esizenza, imnandi imisebenzi yethu eminye out there in the secular world. But you know what? This is the best hour. This is the holy hour. If I can have this hour only, I would be happy. Thank you so much. We'll meet you next week when we're doing The Man by the Pool at Bethesda Part 2. God bless you. Thank you.